Entrepreneurship
on 702.
14 minutes after 9 o'clock, and we start our conversation. Alex Molokoane is here with me, former owner of the popularly known hair salons in the 80s and 90s called Alex Hair Salon. Listen, if you were in the townships back in those years, there's no way you could have missed the Alex Hair Salon brand. There's no way. I was just saying now to Alex that my first S-curl, there's var. Was it your hair salon in Black Chain here in Soweto?
No. I started in Crossroads.
Is it Crossroads?
In White City.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay. But
the first hair salon. But before that, there were video shops, which were the first in Soweto. One was in Macadema at Dube. The second one was in Crossroads.
But didn't you have a shop right next to the Benetton shop?
Yeah, I did. No, that was somebody else, Reggie.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yes,
that was my first S-curl.
Exactly.
And then I became bald. Alex.
I hear you, bro.
Yeah, you hear me there. Alex, it's so good to have you here this evening, and I'm really honored for us to have you here. You are an icon in our community, somebody that we look up to, and I got to tell you that the day you called in while we were talking about you, Andisa and I, it was just such a sublime moment for us. And thank you for agreeing to talk to us about your times, about the issue of entrepreneurship. So really, really appreciate it.
Welcome. Thank you so much, and I feel honored to be around here.
Much appreciated.
For me, I'm a bit intimidated by all this technology I see around me.
Don't worry about that stuff.
Yes.
Andisa Ramavhunga is here. He's my partner in crime. We have these conversations bi-weekly about entrepreneurship. Andisa, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time.
Aubrey, I'm excited.
Yeah?
A lot.
I've never seen you this excited.
Almost starstruck, right?
Yeah. Yes.
For those of us who grew up admiring business founders, I think we've got a legend here. A lot of what we talk about is the science of business.
Yeah.
I think today we'll dabble in the art of business, and
Absolutely.
you and I are probably inadequate to talk about the art of business.
Absolutely.
I think that's what's getting me excited. And Tate Molokoane, thank you for honoring our invite. We want to pick your brain.
I'll always do. I always do. But I was touched by Aubrey when he was talking about the people who started with Makwenya. I was listening. I listened to 702 throughout the night until I sleep at 11.
Thank you.
But when you talked about Makwenyas and people who started from the humble beginnings, starting with Makwenya and elevated to the next level and the next level, that's where I started. You
sold Makwenya?
Of course I did.
Really?
And I don't understand why it didn't take off the way I wanted it, but I had to move on to hairdressing. Makwenyas that I did, Kumfulo, was, I was given a break by Ndade Ephraim Shabalala to run my own supermarket around his businesses. And I started with Makwenya. And my first Makwenyas that I did was like a donut with a hole in between.
Yeah.
I had customers from Zola, from Orlando West,
yes,
from White City. And my queue was like almost 1 kilometer long before I start selling. So Makwenya made me who I am and humbled me, the people who gave me good support. And I was very happy.
Wow. Yes. I want to start off, and Andisa, maybe you'll also help me frame the question in the right sort of way. It almost seems to me like any business venture has to be context specific. Yeah. In other words, the socioeconomic realities of that time, the required product or service, whether it's viable or not, and whether or not the entrepreneur is ready and prepared to take the opportunity that is presenting itself at the time.
Yeah.
You and I have been looking at Alex's business and how it happened. I didn't know that he started out in the Makwenya business.
I didn't know either.
But from your perspective, as somebody who studies these kinds of things, what would have the context been for him to be able to be successful at that time?
One of the things we don't talk about, because we are focused on the science of business and not the art of business, is the fact that context is as important as strategy. And what do I mean by context? This old adage saying that says, an idea is whose time has come.
Yep.
It means, by the way, there was a time when it was not ripe to be done. And what do we mean by saying it was not ripe? It means the context or the environment was not ready for that environment. And we've seen it with a lot of businesses, by the way. I always go back to the Americans and say, Apple, at some point in time, we could not have thought of an iPad because that technology, by the way, existed at the time. But the way it's packaged, the environment was just not ready for it. The likes of Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. Is to then say, contextualize, to say that there is something that happens in the environment, which, by the way, you need to preach as an entrepreneur and understand. And I think we started talking about it with Alex Molokoane when he called in the last time, if you remember. I thought my first time when I went into Alex Salon, by the way, I think I went to two of them. There was one you had in High Point,
yes,
in Hillbrow,
that's
and
right.
I think there was another one in Carlton Center,
Yes,
if
that's right.
I remember.
Yes.
This was the time, by the way, if you think about the context of what was happening at the time, and I started explaining to say, this is when I think South Africa was beginning the journey of being Americanized. I remember guys who used to wear very well, who used to be dressed very neatly. I don't know, probably Alex Molokoane, you'd know the lingo much better. I'm Ivy.
Yeah, Ndugos, my hippie.
Americans.
Yeah,
Americans.
Americans.
Yeah, and we're starting to be flooded with the movies, and all of a sudden, a life for a black person stopped being about survivalist. It became very aspirational.
Right.
Yes.
And I think the way he packaged his product, by the way, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I need to give him a shout out and say, hey, I'm excited. He's got a pub in Northwold called 74 and Trustee. And he says, no, come.
Yeah, we must go and visit for it.
No, we must. Because again, he's got something,
purposes.
He's got something very interesting going as well, how he's packaged this thing. He says, no, I know, bro, Alex, you must tell him. I used to live somewhere at Northgate, at High Point, and I used to go to his salon. So, and this is someone, by the way, that I've never spoken to him about you. But when the moment I said, hey, I'm meeting Alex Molokoane, the name just resonated. But that says to me that the context of that time and what you had to provide, they were somehow match made in heaven, or at least that finite spot, which, by the way, we call the optimal value proposition in strategy term. But I'd be interested to know, to really ask, and maybe before we take it back to Amagwinya, and I'd also like to understand the video business, is to say, what was the context around Alex Hair Salon? And what was in your mind to start that type of business, and what was happening probably in that environment?
I must say I was privileged to meet a gentleman called Brian Gule, who came with a concept from the US. And he said to me when I was selling Magwinya, every time he came from Carlton Center, he owned Black Wave, and came to me and said, you still doing the fish and chips here? I've knocked off. I made my money. What is it that you're doing here? And I marveled at this guy, and he's tall, dark, and looked American. And I said, tell me your story. And he said, get into haircare industry, get into beauty industry. That's where the money is. With groceries, Magwinya's, fish and chips, you're making money, but be stylish as well. And I said, I like what you're saying. And then that's how we took off. And he had Black Wave, which I eventually get to own as Alex Hair. And then when he left, going back to the States. And I was privileged by then, we were not allowed to do retailing in Johannesburg downtown as black people. And then I was fortunate to meet Johan Rupert, who signed a lease for me for 3 years.
Johan
Rupert.
How does that happen?
Brian knew him from New York when they were together in the US. And then I got to know him. And then we had a problem to sign a lease, and we were not allowed as black people, particularly in Carlton Center. Black people wouldn't get into retail space, maybe office space, yes. And then I was taking over a Black Wave before I converted to Alex Hair. And Johan Rupert said, we'd like you to trade anywhere where you want. I'm prepared to sign a lease for you.
Really?
And he signed a lease for 3 years.
Huh.
And
really, eh?
I felt privileged. But not only that, with his father, Anton Rupert, he is the guy who sponsored the map that we did. They picked up a few guys from Soweto who were in enterprising and then get us to do a mini MBA at Wits, which was 18 months. And I was one of those guys. So Entrepreneurship also played a role in terms of developing black people. I was one of them.
I want to just pause there, Bra Alex, with regards to the idea that already you had an entrepreneurial streak. You were already enterprising. You were already making amakwenya for a profit.
Yes.
And you knew how to do it. You were innovative. Yours had the hole in them. You know.
Or was this before the donors, I guess, right?
Well, alongside the donors.
Yeah. And another thing, perhaps I need to throw into because somebody might be listeners, really, guys, you're on about amakwenya, really. But we need to also accept the fact that we're talking about a time and a legal context where black people were not allowed to do many things. That's why the story of Anton Rupert coming to your aid in that way is quite a startling one. Yes. I'd like to hear more about that. But here's the question that I wanted to ask is, at that moment, while you were already enterprising, there was somebody who said to you, you need to go and get academically, or let me say, intellectually trained about this.
Yes.
That is quite interesting, because many of us, and this is part of what we are trying to do here, to say that you can be a brilliant panel beater, brilliant.
Yes.
You can be a brilliant makwenya maker, brilliant.
Yes.
You can be a brilliant hair salon person, brilliant. Technically you are brilliant.
Yes.
But there is a side to this whole thing that requires a level of education in order to be able to operate commercially.
Yes.
Doing what you're brilliant at. Tell me about that moment of understanding the value of that mini MBA that you had to go and do at Wits.
There was a time when I realized that I could expand in hairdressing, and then you cannot expand without having good systems. You cannot expand without knowledge. You cannot expand without good marketing behind you, and then having a focus of where you want to take the business. So, and we were picked up, and I think I was fortunate enough what I touched turned out to be gold. I mean, the videos, a video shop was the first in Soweto, the first in the township to have video shops there. So I had a lot of people coming in. We used to hire out the Betamax machines, the VHS machines, and people would, it was something new. But I developed from there, and I said, when I met Brian, I said, all right, I'm not going to end up with the videos, because now I realized that it was just slowing down. But that's when hair care and beauty started booming. And then I said, I'm going to open the first salon to cater for our people, where people were emulating Americans in terms of afro hairs, S-curls, and perms, and beauty in general, And I said, I think there's money to be made here. And I don't know, for some reason, I just took off, and it was one thing after the other, because in no time I had about 6 salons in Soweto, 8 salons in Johannesburg. I ended up with about 18 hair salons. But the most important thing that I had become was to sell the idea to the people that you can make money with me, like me, in terms of franchising. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm the first black franchisor in the country. I still have to hear of any other franchise company which will sell you the concept, sell you the name and the logo to trade on, and then the systems. So far, maybe you guys know of somebody like that, other than McDonald's, KFC's, Chicken Licking, because closest to what I had going was a McDonald's, which was owned in South Africa by the president. The president he was a master licensee for McDonald's. He was not a franchisor.
Yes.
Yeah. So he had the rights to develop franchise in South Africa.
Yes.
But he was not a franchisor. So he'd get a certain percentage from the McDonald's outlets, but a bigger portion will go to the head office of McDonald's in the US.
There's so many layers in your story that each of them need to be, and this is a 4-hour conversation, but we'll get there. So this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. We have to have this man here. To your issue around the aspirational nature of society at that time, that we as black people were starting to get out of the cycle of survivalist living, and we were starting to get aspirational, and what we aspired to was the American sort of lifestyle and so forth. It sounds like it's smack bang on to what Bra Alex is talking about. I want you to look into the story that Bra Alex tells us about the need for systems, connected to the conversation we had last week about scaling. It appears that was part of the scaling process too, yeah?
Yeah, in fact, my question to Ntate Molokoane, and I don't want to call you, I know the Alex name is probably much more fancier to me, but let me give you the respect and call you Ntate Molokoane. Is the process around when you moved from one store to the second store to the third store, how did you ensure that one, quality is consistent? And two, that you get the right quality people doing that consistency? And for those people who don't know, by the way, what I've found, at least having grown in that era, is that all your stores looked alike, right? I mean, you could never go to
corporate identity.
Corporate identity.
Yes.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I would like to ask that question to say, what was your thought process to getting that standardization across the 18 stores? But before maybe you come in, Aubrey, I'd also like to maybe throw some lessons, by the way, because there's some themes that are coming through. That we've learned with entrepreneurs. The first one is that you've got to put yourself in the line. You've got to start somewhere, whether I'm a video game, but you got to read the trends as well, right? Because Ntate Molokoane understood that video is slowing down. And the exciting part, by the way, you were never a hairdresser, but yet you grew probably one of the biggest black hairdressing business.
Yes.
So your point, Aubrey, that says you have to be good at something.
Yes.
Maybe he found people who were good at them, but he was good out of making a business.
Right.
Out of that, which are the nuggets that at least I'm picking up. But coming back to the scaling question, what was your thinking pattern there, and how did you ensure, or maybe they take us to the history to say, how did you ensure that consistency of the brand name, consistency of the quality, the type of people you got in there, and by the way, how you got into those high-end retail sites? I mean, for a lot of people who don't know, by the way, High Point at that time was almost equivalent to our Sandton City.
That's right.
Which is areas that would never get into as a black business.
And the Rupert story for me is
fascinating.
It's fascinating. I mean, we have specific narratives today about the Ruperts and so forth, but your story seems to be telling a different story altogether, yeah?
Yes. Basically, with my kind of business, I was fortunate to meet USALEP. It's a United States franchise association, whereby they looked at the concept of certain black traders in South Africa and say, what is it that we can convert their business into franchise model, then to empower other people? Because if you have a model, any other person can come and buy into your model, and then you have a training schedule. You have operation and procedures manual. You have a franchise agreement, something like this, which I had. So, which were trained in Puerto Rico by the International Franchise Association with few black guys. We were about 6. And Kenny Sipai is one of them from Brick and Tile in Soweto. And then...
Yeah, I know Bracken, yeah.
Yeah, you know Bracken.
Yeah.
So, I came out tops in terms of duplicating the knowledge I have about hairdressing. A lot of people were talented to do hair, but they're not so talented in terms of administration, in terms of business acumen, in terms of marketing what they have. You see, you find a guy, he's very good at technical work, but he can't impart the knowledge to other people. He cannot grow what he has and duplicate it. And in terms of, if somebody can buy into your system and get involved into identical what you do, and then you collect revenue in terms of 7% of the turnover, helping it in advertising the product, and having identical product in Durban, in Cape Town, anywhere in the world.
So that there's a consistent expectation by the client of the treatment that they'll get at that particular shop.
Consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did right. Consistency of what you find in Alex in High Point, you should find in Soweto, in Durban, in Bloemfontein. Because we had a lot of people who would come knowing that if you go to any Alex Hair, the standards are going to be the same. The treatment is going to be the same. Because we had a training center as well, where we train people equally about our concept and how we do our business.
So I want to invite you, as you listen to this conversation, my guest, Alex Molokoane, Andisa Ramavhunga is showing me up here about my manners. Yeah, but I'm writing on the brand name, Alex Hair, so that people are on the same page with us. And of course, Andisa Ramavhunga, Group Chief Advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting Group, and we're looking at the life and times and the journey of Alex Molokoane in the business world, including the hair business world. But who would have thunk it? Who would have thunk it that with a hole inside? You know that song? They say, I'm hopeless like a penny with a hole in it.
I think that's Dion Paris.
Yeah. But Alex had a donut or a legueño with a hole in it. That must have been quite novel, kokasi. A cuina with a hole in it and selling.
And it was a concept from nowhere whereby, it was unique. It was different.
Sure.
And then the dough would be well done from inside. Because sometimes when you find the dough is still a bit harder inside.
Yes.
But now that ensured that it's equally burnt or equally cooked. So there's no dough inside.
I want to take some calls. There's a lot of people that want to talk to us. Talk to you, Alex. If you want to put on your ears there so that you can hear them.
All right.
And then be able to respond. But I also want to talk about this, Andisa, and maybe you'll give me the wording from a business science point of view. It appears to me that this generation of business people was not so much about the look or the idea that I look like a businessman.
Yeah.
They did the business and then looked like the business.
Yeah.
And I sometimes get the sense that a generation younger tends to want to look the part and not necessarily be the part. I want you to give me the words to describe that phenomenon and how we can overcome it. Because I think that many a time we get so caught up in looking the part, talking the part. I listen to guys go Chisanyama talking about 5 bar, 2 bar. Like, dudes, can you actually do the business, right? So I want to talk about that because I think that it's very, very important. Alex speaks of business acumen.
Acumen, yeah.
I want you to talk to what is that concept?
Yeah.
What does business acumen mean? Let's speak to Twane in Springs. Good evening to you, Twane.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening to you. Go ahead, Mama.
Yes, hi, Dr. Molokoane. This is Twane Chaka. I don't know if you still remember me. I used to work at the Dubasi Group as an accounts executive.
Oh, yes.
Crossroads.
Oh, yes. Yes. At
And
Dubasi
I
Group, yes.
did hair at your salon in Crossroads.
Yes.
And then later on in life, when you launched another salon in Hillbrook, where you launched, people were shampooing their hair for free. And then you're short of shampoos. I offered myself. That's where I know you from. I know you've been a great man in this business. I know you from far. You remember that?
Thank you.
Yes.
I really appreciate it. I remember Dubasi Group. And actually, Dubasi is the one we were very, very close. He gave me a loan when I started my first video shop in Dube. And a loan of 1,000 rand. Unfortunately, he's passed on. And RIP to him. Yeah, he has passed on.
Oh, sorry about that. I didn't know.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. It was nice to hear you still alive.
Thank you very much for your call, man. Sorry, Alex, you did say? Okay, all right. Twane's gone. No, it's good. Twane, thank you very much for your call. Can I take a voice note very quickly, please, Chris? Do you see it there? Let's take that. I will not.
Good morning, good evening. Hey, Alex Alex, you take me back. Hey, those Maqueñas, the ones with the hole in the center. I used to buy those Maqueñas. I knew that until 9 o'clock in the evening, we get the Maqueñas from Chabalala. We go to midnight, we get those. What a great gentleman. Alex, from the autumn harvest times, I liked your mustache by then. I had I liked your mustache, and I had my mustache, and then I kept them. I used to tell people I'm like Alex. Thanks, man. Thanks. What a gentleman. Great man.
I really appreciate my brother. Thank you so much. And you take me back to autumn harvest days where I was in the billboards and all. And remember that time when I was advertising that I was not drinking. I was just posing with water.
Wow.
Yes, I didn't drink alcohol by then. But thank you so much. And Mofulo people and the surrounding area supported me with that Maqueña, and I was so excited.
Wow.
I could make a difference to the people, and they made a difference into my life as well.
Alex, Andisa, the issues around business acumen.
Yeah.
The understanding of the need for systems is something that just jumps out at me when Alex talks about that.
Yeah.
The need for systems over and above technical competence.
I mean, the story of Alex is multi-layered, right, and exciting. I mean, I can draw so many learnings out of it, and maybe let's separate systems, because I think it's just elaborated now to say how he was able to piggyback off a franchising process, or at least thinking a pattern, so that he may make sure that is scale up. But what for me is quite interesting, if people are following through this acumen that you refer to, Aubrey, that decision making, right? I mean, I'm realizing that think about Alex could have just gone and built another Guinya. But all he said there, he said, let me differentiate my Guinya. I mean, the way he describes how it's prepared from the inside out, how he puts in a hole. Remember, that comes back to our strategy question, right? That says, you've got two ways of competing in the world of strategy. It's either it's a commodity and you become a low-cost provider, or you differentiate and you can charge a premium. Where I'm understanding Alex, and it's the same, and you see this that thread of message. Even in the hair salon, it was about aspirations and how it's brand packaged. So he's not in a commodity business. He can take a very commoditized value proposition or product offering, but quickly his mind is, how do I make it unique? How do I make it palatable? And more importantly, how do I package it together so that it increases the value of it and differentiates it from the rest of the other products that are in there? And to me, that's where the acumen, remember we said acumen is exactly that. It's about decision making. It's about you understanding and thinking about the decisions that you're making and making those options. And to me, this story is so inspirational, and I hope our entrepreneurs are picking up at least the nuggets, because they resonate a lot with what we've been talking about.
One of the biggest teachers, Alex, is difficult times in business. Sometimes we can call those failures, but difficult times will come in business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about some of the learnings that you would have had because of difficult times in business.
Very difficult to say, but the learnings that I've learned over time was that if it fails, go down just by your knee. Don't say I'm flat and out. Come up again with something else.
Sikam.
Yes.
Yeah, Uskar ki
will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usikami fela. You'll wake up and move on and never regret. And every mistake that you do should be a learning curve for you to say, I'm going to do it better. I'm not giving up. And
and you can say to me, no, I don't want to go there. I'm very. Mm-hmm. What were some of the mistakes you made?
The mistakes I made was growing up too quick, too fast, and without a lot of people following where I'm going to, particularly with the franchise. As you said, with the system, our consultant talked about the systems, what was important. My idea was to empower as many people as possible because I couldn't run all the shops by myself.
Sure.
So if you have any investment to make and buy into something which exists with good systems, which guarantees returns, I wanted to spread that to everybody. Eventually, I could have owned 5 stores. I shouldn't have owned 16 or 20. So that there's energy and then there's income for multiple people around. That's what I was looking at. Let's grow together.
Yeah.
And
I want you, Andisa, to help me with this concept. And that is the concept of ownership. You know, in the locations, Kokasi, when we talk of ownership versus the options of ownership that now exist, I think a whole show needs to be dedicated to that idea, this idea of ownership. We still, I think, get caught up in the idea of thinking that ownership can only be, I am the boss, I make all of the decisions, I the one that contributes the biggest donation at the funeral, I'm the one that marries all of the beautiful women. There seems to be a idea about ownership in business that we tend to miss out on. And maybe to try and get out of the clumsiness of my question, I want to say this and then I'm going to let you roll. It's better to own 1% of something than to own 100% of nothing.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Well, there's this African adage, right? It's a saying, it's a proverb that says if you want to go very fast, you go alone. But if you want to go very far, you go with people. And that for me resonates, right? Because it then says you can move fast, but the question is, will you go far? The reality is not. And it opens up a question I think a lot of our callers have been asking about, and it's been a consistent theme. And if you remember, I keep on rebuffing back to say, okay, you are good technically and you're not good in terms of marketing and thinking about strategy. Why don't you get a partner? Because what I always say, and this is in my mind without doubt, is to say you can only be good in so many things. I mean, some of the people are, and I said this, by the way, Aubrey, if you remember, I said you get the most brilliant people in the world, but even with them, they have so many range of skills, right? But you ask how much of that depth in the skill. How much do you know? I mean, you could be aware around accounting and finance, but how deep can you go with that concept? You could be aware of marketing, but how deep can you go? You could be aware of operations, but how deep can you go? You have to realize as people that we have our own talents and we are restricted in terms of how much we know and how much we absorb and how much we can do. How do you augment that? It's by bringing people. Because if you are able to bring people with different talents and different skill sets and realize that actually this 100% of mine by myself is worth R1, but if I add these 2 people, that R1 is probably R5. And if I divide that R5 by 3 people, I'm better off, right? Because I've got R1.33. I don't know, my math is letting me go right now, right?
But that means, and Alex, I need your thoughts here. Yeah. Then I want to take some calls. But that means that the business becomes systems run rather than the business is run by my whims.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the things that I saw, Kokasi, for example, around the idea of ownership, is that people wanted to reserve the right for themselves to be able to go at any time during the day to the till and pull out a wad of cash. Maybe that cash is going to be used for legitimate business reasons, but often because of that freedom, that undisciplined freedom to be able to reach into the cash register and take out a wad of cash to go and buy mapopotane for the children, or to go and buy bohobe from ma at home or whatever the case may be, because sometimes the reasons are very legitimate. But it appears to me that the business has to be respected in terms of the idea that this is not your money. This is the business's money. And maybe that's part of the thinking that needs to enter into the concept of ownership, right, Alex?
You've never been so right. You're dead right, my brother. You know, the township business has fallen through because if the father has a business, supermarket or whatever business, general deal, there's no control. One son come and pick up some money, buy this. The other one to pick up. There's no accountability. No one runs a receipt. What are you going to do with that money? There's no budget. And most of the problem that I found with our business in the township is that if the children works for the father, they don't get paid. As a result, they've got needs. The father says, I'll do everything. But so they tend to take money from the till without accountability. And that's where we went wrong. That's where I'm talking about systems. In my industry, we have brilliant stylists, artists, people who can create miracles on people's head. But when it comes to administration, when it comes to accountability, it's not their area. So that's where you get somebody with the good systems to put in place to account for every cent what has happened to it.
And so it brings me, Andisa, and I want to take these calls, to the issue of business for subsistence reasons versus business for the growth of the business, and how we manage ourselves through that eye of the needle. In other words, many of our people had businesses and have businesses, but those businesses are still very much at a subsistence level, and people need to eat. People need to buy clothes. People need to get into the taxi for the children to go to school. Well, there are expenses, and we can't deny those expenses. And many times that's what hinders the growth of the business. I want you to talk to that. Think about that. I want to talk to our listeners. Piri in Alex is back. Hey, Piri.
Hi, good evening, props.
Yeah, man, go ahead.
Ramavhunga, Mr. Alex there. Very inspirational once again, indeed. I mean, I just wanted to ask, I'm sure during Mr. Molokoane's time, capital was very limited, and there was no this great ventures that offer capital to budding entrepreneurs. How did he make it? How did he manage to have his capital and to be able to establish his businesses, and also across different places? And just one more question, Ops. I mean, I think at some point you guys did answer this question, but I still want to understand what are entrepreneurs actually born or made? Can I just wake up in the morning in my street here in Alex and say I want to be an entrepreneur, or what does it take to become the next Mr. Molokoane?
Thanks very much there, Piri. Let's take one from Tumsani in Pretoria. Hi, Tumsani.
Hey, how are you, man?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Go ahead, Tumsani.
Yeah, no, Alex, he picked me up, man, when I was down in 1984. I started working for him at his video shop, and then I transferred to the salon. Then he made me a rep of one of the products called World of Kells. And he got me a license to drive. He set me up, ran one of his shops in Zola, and ran one of the shops in Duve. So I give credit of my life to him. I met my spouse at his salon. I did her hair, and today we are 33 years married.
Wow.
And he is one guy that had trust in me. He showed me a lot of things. I became an entrepreneur looking at him, and he had a private suit at his White City shop, Alex Hair in White City. And we got to mix with the, big honchos of the corporate world. And, we admired those guys because they were black executives. And, one could see that, there's life out there. You could become whatever you wanted to be.
Yeah.
And, very prominent guys came in there. They discussed a lot of things. And, it was just to be around them.
Tumsani,
and,
let me let you go, my brother, but thank you so much for your call. Much appreciated. Okay. Alex?
Hey, Tumsani was one of my best employee.
Yeah.
Best buddy. A younger brother. I brought him up from Dube. And he went step by step with me, and he listened. And today he's a successful man. We play golf together. He beats me sometimes, I beat him sometimes. But it's just golf. But at the end of the day, those were the pillars of my strength, whereby you could work with reliable people. You can leave them on a till. No cent will be missing. That's do me for you.
Andisa, we're coming to the end of our conversation, but I do want you to reflect on the subsistent business versus the need for us to cross that Rubicon, as it were, for a business to get to a place where it is now a maturing business. We've talked about the various phases of a business, but there are some realities that are peculiar to us here. Businesses sometimes get to a point where they are feeding the family, but being suffocated by those realities. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, so I'll answer that question on two levels. One is to say that the financial discipline, whether it's a subsistence business or it's a scaling business, is the same, right? I think entrepreneurs need to distinguish between expenses that are personal and expenses that belong to the business. And if you remember, when we were talking about one of the 5 reasons that businesses fail, one of them was financial management, where you can't distinguish between your own personal cost. And I think it's quite important to distinguish between the two, because I know we have pressures, right? But our pressures as entrepreneurs must be sustained by our earnings from the business. Not to say that we need to take the business and make it our earnings. I don't know whether that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I want to reflect back to Ntate Molokwane's journey again to say what distinguishes a subsistence business to a scaling business. And I think we've had this. It's the thing of vision. And I'm appreciating it with Ntate Molokwane, because for him it's about empowering other people, and hence the franchising of the Alex Hair Salon. If you hear the Magunya story and the gentleman who just called now, that ability to take people from different environments and put them in an area and you entrust them with big responsibilities, and you are able to transit and grow them from one industry to another, again, is a testament of empowerment. So it's the question is, if you are running a subsistence business, it does, at least if you've got the appetite and you want to scale and become big, like Ntate Molokwane has been, is that thing that says, think about the vision of the business, and you need to then take some time off and really think hard around, why are you in business? What is the reason for the existence of this business? Is it just to feed people, or there's some much bigger a dream to it?
Alex, as we close, the township economy is going through some difficult times at the moment, following the issue of the death of children as a result of food poisoning and so forth. And some are looking at this as perhaps an opportunity for those of us who come from townships and villages to rethink about how we reactivate ourselves as commercial and business people. What are the opportunities now? How do we take up those opportunities? And where is Alex Molokoane now in life?
Thanks, my brother. Where's Alex? Where are opportunities is really in front of us. there are people who come in from anywhere outside and see more opportunities than we can see. So we have to open our eyes and say, what is it that I can do? And not what is it that who I can work for, what I can do for myself and create a job for myself. That's what I like people to look at. Or if somebody has something which is a winning product, how can I enhance and be part of it? So where I am right now, I just took back some time and say, because of our government not regulating the industry properly, not putting good bylaws to make sure that people don't do hair in the street in an unsafe environment and with no licenses, without proper training, people did what they want. And then that's where we just got lost into things and say, anybody can do hair. I mean, I was paying rent, something like 60 to 80,000. And somebody will put a hair salon or do hair in the street without paying rent. That's what's created problems for us. But right now, I must pay credit to a man when I was trying to find myself and say, what is it that I do that Alex Hair seems to be dwindling? I went to City Deep, Joburg Market. I met a gentleman who works for Boxer. He's the chief buyer of fruit and veg. His name is Arushan. He said, Alex, you can make something people have to eat every day. If you can get involved, we can support you. And I spoke to the guy. And I had a little farm somewhere in West Rand. He said, develop that. As it developed, it turned out to be big. And I had to work with other local farmers. So at the moment, I'm supplying Boxer stores with cabbage, which is laughable to other people.
Now we need to be careful whose opinion we care about. It's like, some people's opinion doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah. I would proudly say Boxer had 500 stores. If you go into Boxer and say, what is it that I can supply you with, particularly when you trade within African communities, bus stations, townships and all that, because Boxer is subsidiary of Pick n Pay, and Pick n Pay is having a bit of problems, but they depend on it. And I saw the niche market to supply cabbage. I started with maybe 500 cabbages a week. Today I can proudly say I give them cabbage of about 10,000 a month.
Wow.
Most of the cabbage people are eating from Boxer. I supply that.
Alex Molokoane, I want to thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us and just opening up yourself in the way that you have for us to glean from you. I want to thank you so much for your life and your times, your challenges that you've overcome and those that you're still facing now, but your willingness to come and talk to us and just impart some of your wisdom and knowledge. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Aubrey. I think as far as I'm concerned, you're my hero.
Alex. Let me let Andisa Ramavhunga say the last word as we close. Thank you so much, Alex.
Look, I'm inspired, Ntate Molokoane. I think this is Jesus. I have to think or even pinch myself, but I think the lesson that I'm learning is that what we always talk about with Aubrey, Black Child is possible.
Yep.
I think we've spoken, it might look technical, it might look academic, but I think we have a living testament here of all these concepts we talk about, whether it's strategy, scaling, organizational design, vision, having people around and partnerships.